Hi, welcome to the Growth Zone. I'm Christian Bartsch, and with me today is Joe Sullivan. We have a fun and jam-packed show for you today. We are going to be talking about ways to keep marketing and sales moving forward. The four-step process for moving business development online, and we're going to finish off with how to get your marketing and sales teams to support the transition. Yes, so Joe is an industrial marketing consultant and co founder of the St. Louis based industrial marketing agency, Gorilla 76. What does a Gorilla do? Well, Gorilla helps mid-sized B2B manufacturers identify, attract, engage, and drive sales opportunities with ideal fit customers. They make this happen through a combination of positioning, content marketing, SOE, website development, account-based marketing, and sales enablement. In addition to co-leading the agency, Joe serves as the company business development lead and consults Gorilla's clients on both sales and marketing strategy. Much of this time is dedicated to speaking and writing and creating video content on behalf of the agency. So great, that's awesome to have you here on the show, Joe. So I've got three questions for you, as I've already pre-announced. And let me jump into the first question because I think that's really important topic for today's times. And that would be, with trade shows cancelled and travel limited in the foreseeable future, what are some ways that marketing and sales departments can shift budget and energy to keep things moving forward?
Yeah, well, it's a good question. What we've kind of seen happening, over the last few years, in particular. My agency's been at this for about 14 years, and in particular, over the last 3 to 5 years or so, we've seen, a lot of the clients we work with, mid-size manufacturers, start to really take a closer look at what they're doing, what's actually driving ROI on the marketing and sales front. And not to say that there's not a place for, say, trade shows or more traditional forms of business development, but with all the technology that's emerged in the last 5 or 10 years, and the ability to measure what's working online versus sort of taking guesses at what's working in a more traditional sense with, say, trade shows or print ads or traditional media. We've seen a lot of companies start to shift their budget online a bit more and at least experiment with doing things like, content marketing, search engine optimization, paid media channels, like, through the paid social channels on LinkedIn or Facebook or YouTube, or forms of retargeting ads. And so I think, there's a lot of, a lot of companies get really excited about the technology and what they can do, and they wind up diving into it and kind of missing the point where you need to think about the strategy first. And what are we trying to accomplish here from a business standpoint? So I think that the opportunity for a lot of B2B companies right now is to think about are the things we've been traditionally doing for many years, could they be done better? Is there something else we could be doing that might demonstrate more tangible ROI? And then before diving into the tactics and getting excited about all the things they could be doing and starting it, to really step back and think about the strategy. Who's the ideal buyer? How do they gather information? What are the sources of information they go to? How can we be in front of them? How can we deliver the right message? And in particular, how do we deliver the right message to the right people at those organizations? Because often it's a variety of people who make up the buying process.
Yeah, that's great. So let's move on to talking about actually the business development. As you said, things have to change. You have to adapt, of course, and business still has to move on. Well, I noticed that you recently hosted a webinar, and that was titled Prospecting in the Absence of Trade Shows and Travel. And you took the attendees through a four-step process for moving business development online. Can you quickly summarize those four steps for me, please?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, this webinar we put on was really to do exactly what I was just talking about, to think about how do we move, maybe not entirely move out of a traditional setting of marketing and sales and developing business with the right people from the right companies, but how do we start to sort of foray into the online space and replicate some of what we're doing there, but maybe a bit more at scale, maybe in a way where we can reach people who are across the country or across the world, even when you have a team that can't be in everybody's office every day. So trying to replicate the things that are effective in person and humanizing your brand and having real conversations with real people. So yeah, the webinar we put on was really as you mentioned, a four-step process here, where the first step I'll kind of run through real quickly and then talk about each in a little more depth. But the steps were essentially, number one, build a list of the right people from the right companies, and then identify tools and start using tools that you can use to find their contact information, so you can actually reach out to them. Step two is crafting messaging around what these people actually care about. So rather than, as I always say, blasting a megaphone in their ear and talking about how great you are and what you sell and why they should buy from you, instead crafting messaging that leads with the pains that they experience in their jobs, the goals they're trying to achieve, the common questions they have around those things. Step three is executing an outbound campaign. So, the cadence of delivery for your messages, the tools you can use to deliver an email, for example, and be able to follow up and track that email and determine who's engaged and who warrants further follow up. And then the fourth step is amplifying the reach of your campaign, of your outbound campaign, by using hyper-targeted paid media campaigns. So I'll go into depth a little bit more on these steps. So the first step was building a list of the right people from the right companies. So, we always are advocates for thinking about who the ideal customer is, both at a company level and a human level. And so, let's say you're a heavy equipment manufacturer of some sort, or equipment used in the manufacturing process, and you sell big ticket, items, big machinery that has a long buying process and a complex sales process. You want to think about who are some of the most profitable types of customers you currently serve that maybe you could replicate, and what do these companies look like? Are they in what industry are they in? How big are these companies? Do they have geographic constraints to where they're located? Are they located in a specific country or along the the coast because of hurricane season, or depending on what it is that they sell? And then who are the people who make up the buying process? And that's I think what's really important is when you're selling something that is a big ticket item and it's a complex sale, often it's not just one person that makes up, that is your buyer. It's more of a buying committee, where maybe it's an engineer who you're talking to first because they're experiencing a problem, or a plant manager. But as the sale progresses, other people on their end enter the buying process. At some point, procurement's going to enter the picture, and maybe the C-suite of the company. And so, we need to, that first step is identifying the right companies, and then who those people are, and then being able to go actually find their contact information, so you can go out and reach out to them directly, rather than only relying on inbound and hoping they find you. So there are a variety of tools out there at this point that let you do that. One tool we use is called prospect.io. There's another one called Hunter. Lots of tools like this you can use. And when you pair those tools with LinkedIn or LinkedIn Sales Navigator, finding the people you need to reach has actually become pretty easy to do. So that's the first step. Diving into that second step, crafting messaging around what these people care about, their pains, their goals, their common questions. I think this is probably the most important step. And it's because so many salespeople and marketing people in particular, they start by talking about themselves. This is what we do. This is what we sell. This is what makes us different. This is why our people are better than our competitors' people. And nobody's listening to that until until you've really identified, or they've identified with, a pain that you're talking about, or an issue that you can help them solve, a goal you can help them achieve. So we need to start with those things. And if you've done a good job in step one, identifying the right types of companies and the right types of people, and those are people that you're experts in helping already, you should know these things like the back of your hand, the problems that they're experiencing. So it's a matter of crafting simple, concise messaging that you can use in your outbound or prospecting communications to capture their attention and start earning some trust and make them say, okay, this person's seen and worked with people like me before. This person has helped me help those people solve those types of problems. Maybe they can help me. And then you can start to get into how you solve those problems. But you need to lead with your messaging with things that these people actually care about. The third step here, so in the first two steps, you've identified the right people and you've crafted messaging that will resonate with them. The third step is launching an outbound email campaign. So, if you've collected email addresses, the next step is a matter of getting in front of those people with the right message. So, there are a variety of ways to do outbound email. We're huge advocates at Gorilla for a less salesy approach and an approach that's more helpful in nature. So thinking about, what content have we published, whether that's written content or video content or a podcast like this, where we've demonstrated expertise around those issues or goals we've just talked about. And can we deliver those things inside of our outbound emails? So rather than saying, hey, I'm Joe from Gorilla and we do content marketing and SEO and blah, 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 that nobody cares about, to say, hey, I'm Joe Sullivan. We've helped a lot of mid-sized manufacturers, move their businesses into an online setting from a business development standpoint. The problems that they're often experiencing are things like, lack of good leads, inability to qualify a lead when they come in. And, if these are things that you're experiencing, would love to chat. Here's an article or a white paper I wrote on the topic and link to it. So the difference there is you're focused on helping them with an issue they're likely experiencing rather than talking about all the things you do. And then the fourth step, amplifying reach with hyper-targeted paid media. So, the beauty of advertising today is, as opposed to, say, 10 years ago, you might run a print ad, and this is how a lot of companies I talk to are still operating. You might run a print ad and hope the phones start ringing, in a trade journal or wherever. Today you can, if you've done a good job building that ideal customer profile, and now all of a sudden you can use a platform like LinkedIn or Facebook, where these organizations have these massive databases of people and data points around all of them, and all of a sudden you can run ads to people with specific job titles from specific types of companies in specific geographic regions, who have specific interests, and deliver a message that's very catered to them through an ad, and you eliminate all the waste. And I think one of the best ways to run an ad is, rather than traditional brand advertising where you're again talking about yourself, well, this content that that I talked about creating, that you're publishing on your site and you're using in your outbound email campaigns, you can use these social platforms to just amplify the reach of that content, to say, let's show this article we've written to all of these people who fit these criteria. And now all of a sudden you're not only reaching people that you've identified, but people who are out there who fit the description that they're going to discover this content on their own and wind up on your website where you have the opportunity now to further engage them, to start earning their attention and trust, and all of that is what leads to real conversations. So that's kind of the summary of what we did in the webinar, and the methodology that we preach in terms of moving from a more traditional business development approach to a digital version of that.
Yeah, great. Wonderful. So let's move on to the next topic. And so, my last question is, what do you do to get your marketing and sales teams on the same wavelength as you start making this shift?
Yeah, that's a good question. I kind of get that one all the time, because what I've seen, and I don't know what you see, Christian, but there are so many companies where marketing and sales kind of operate in their own silos. Marketing does their thing, sales does their thing. And while they should be working so closely together and sharing information back and forth and meeting regularly and focusing on the same goals and everything, a lot of times I see this disconnect, and it may be a product of the more traditional audience that we work with in mid-sized manufacturing, but I imagine it's true in a lot of companies. And so I think it all starts with getting the right people in the right room and creating focus. So when we're consulting companies, the first day of any new engagement is what we call a positioning and content strategy workshop. And we get, typically it's the CEO and the VP of sales, the head of marketing, a few key technical professionals, maybe engineers, maybe a few salespeople that are more on the front lines. And we get this group in a room and we get them talking about, where they think the biggest opportunities lie. And that might be a specific product or service that they sell that's high margin, and maybe there's, a big opportunity out there to sell more of it to more people who look like their best customers. Sometimes it's, creating focus on a specific type of company, kind of like I was talking about a few minutes ago. But I think everything starts with focus and getting everybody aligned and on the same page around that. Because if marketing thinks that the focus is selling this thing or reaching this type of person, and the sales team is going in 5 different directions, you wind up just sort of thinning out your resources and accomplishing very little. But when everybody can be in agreement and it comes from the top down, and the CEO and the VP of sales say, yeah, this is the focus. We're focused on this particular market. We're trying to, push these couple of solutions that are most profitable, and there's opportunity with these. And marketing is in agreement with that. Everybody understands their role. Well, now they can work together toward, making progress there. And then I think after that happens, after, you've created that focus, and then you get into these other steps that I was talking about earlier, where, you identify who the companies are that fit those criteria, and you start crafting a plan to go directly at them, probably through inbound marketing, through outbound, and probably through some paid media channels as well.
Great. Then, let me summarize what we've heard today. So, as understood from you, the 4 big steps that we need to focus on is actually to build that list of people, and of course know who we want to target. Especially, as you said, for B2B companies, you have to understand where these target companies are, what they do, and what separates them from the big range of different companies out there that might not be the ideal customer for us. Secondly, of course, we have to find out how to contact them. You mentioned a few tools that might be helpful, like, for instance, Prospect.io, Hunter, and even using LinkedIn Sales Navigator. Nevertheless, even having those contact details, it's important to have as well the right message. and how to send it out, how to actually get them to actually experience that we are having a conversation with them, and instead of just like shouting at them with some kind of marketing garbage or anything that just confuses the people, instead crafting a message that really addresses their pains, their goals, and as well the challenges that they have to go through at the moment. And that then sends us eventually to really then thinking, how do we execute the campaign? How do we get everything running? Launching the campaign so that it actually is working. And as you said, it's better to have a less salesy approach, have more helpful content, so value content. That's a thing that as well from many years as well on websites and other things. It's a very typical thing, but nowadays in a more digital world where more traditional businesses in the B2B area have to, of course, find out how to actually be able to communicate with the potential audience. And foremost as well then to move on to actually amplify the reach, which means using paid media ads and that, like on LinkedIn, Facebook and that, to actually target the people who we really want to target, those who are actually in the buying process, the key decision makers, the influencers, those people who will be contributing to the decision whether they buy our products or not. And that makes it really important then that really the content that we're sending out and the ads, of course, that they're all fitting and really interesting and helpful for the audience who we want to actually get in a conversation. And as you said as well in the last part, it's so important to try to avoid this disconnect of staff, especially with the strategy, when the people don't understand why are we doing this, what are we actually doing. It's a typical thing, like with all the things that go towards the mission and the vision. People don't understand it. They can't really, they aren't sold on it. They're not going to actually actively support what we're doing. That's why it's so important to create that focus and as well have a positioning and content strategy that makes sense, where sales and marketing teams are working together and not actually going the opposite direction and creating eventually frustration as well for those who are maybe more in the product development, maybe in the customer service and other areas, who then eventually then just see sales and marketing going crazy in different directions and causing havoc. So thank you very much, Joe Sullivan, for having been on our show as today's guest. And I hope this has been very interesting content for our guests.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yes, you're welcome. And that's the final part of our questions, and then we'll see what's going to be for the next episode. I hope you have found the information helpful. I have for you several interesting guests for the next episode of our show. These include Susan Meyer. Susan is a brand strategist and visual artist that can help you grow your business by tapping into your creativity, as well as explain the myths about creativity that hold us back. Well, that's all for today's episode of The Growth Zone. Thanks for listening. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or Spotify so you will never miss an episode. Plus, if you haven't got your signed copy of the marketing book, stop by our website at book.prmediareach.com and hurry, because the reserve batch of signed books are almost sold out.